everybody. How are you? Okay, now I should make it very clear from the outset that storytelling, from my cultural perspective, is not a spectator sport. So you don't sit there passively while I do all the work, okay? We work together and the story is told. Is that a deal? Okay, cool. So I just want to give you a bit of background, apart from what you heard the lovely Rachel say. I've been a storyteller for 25 years, and I began storytelling, first of all, because I was broke and I needed some money. And someone told me that I could earn £20 an hour telling stories. And that in 1986, that was a lot of money to me then. So I said, great, I'll do it. So I joined a storytelling group, and 6 months after I joined the storytelling group, I had an opportunity to tell at my first international storytelling festival, where Ben Haggerty, who was here last year, invited me to tell a story. And I said, oh no, I've only been telling stories for 6 months and I don't feel capable of telling at a festival after just 6 months. He said, I'll give you £60 for one story. I said, I'm there. So I went to my first storytelling festival in 1987, January 1987. And that's where I met Toop for the first time and worked with Toop for the first time. And we've been working together on and off for the last 25 years. So I think that deserves a round of applause. And as was said earlier, I specialize in stories from West Africa, the Caribbean, and Arabia. And the reason why it was West Africa and the Caribbean is because my parents are from Jamaica. And in Jamaica, people tell these stories called Anansi stories. Anansi is a folk hero from Ghana originally, and he traveled with the slaves during the Atlantic Middle Passage to Jamaica. And then when my parents left Jamaica and came to England in the 60s, all of those migrants who left the Caribbean took the Anansi stories with them. So my question as a child was, how come I know about this character Anansi, but I'm here in Manchester in England? And how come my parents have a different culture to me because I was born in England? And how come Anansi originally came from Africa? So at the time of Anansi, or my explorations about Anansi, I was also asking questions about self and identity, cultural identity, because I had this dual cultural relationship with England and English folklore, and Jamaica and Jamaican folklore, but this Jamaican folklore harked back to West Africa. So that kind of galvanized, electrified my English, your English I hope, galvanized and electrified my interest in stories and storytelling. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you some of my favorite stories. Is that all right? And as I said before, it's very important that you engage with the story as much as I do, because storytelling usually is told in a community setting. And as I don't know you very well, I have to very quickly create a sense of community. So we do it together. If you want to hear my story, when I say crick, you say crack. Crick! And the way you say crack tells me how much you want to hear this story. Crick! I'm not convinced. Crick! 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 Once upon a time, there was an old lady. She lived in a house at the bottom of a steep hill. On the top of the steep hill lived her daughter. Her daughter was an amazing cook. She cooked delicious things to eat and delicious things to drink. And the old lady liked to climb up that steep hill to go to her daughter's house, to partake, to share with her in all of this delicious food. Crick! 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 Now it just so happened that one day the old lady, she woke up, she opened her cupboard and she saw that the cupboard was bare. She said, oh, there's no food in my cupboard. That means one thing and one thing only. I'm going to wash, I'm going to dress, I'm going to take my walking stick, I'm going to walk along the road, I'm going to go up that hill, I'm going to go and see my daughter, and she will give me delicious things too, and delicious things too. And so it was. The old lady, she washed, she dressed, she took her walking stick, she exited her house, she locked the door, and she started to walk. And as she walked, she sang, a rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my walking stick. That's your bit, okay? A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my walking stick. Let me hear you. Lighting man, could you turn the lights up a little bit on the audience? I want to see them. Turn the light up because they're hiding from me. Thank you. No, there's no escape. Okay? So I want you to take your walking stick. You have it? Let me see it. Wave your walking stick. Good. Now hit the ground with your walking stick. And I want you to say with me, a rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my walking. You? Again, a rick-a-tick-a. Here I on my. Here I on my. She walked and she walked and she walked until she came to a creature. This creature had sharp grey ears, sharp grey snout, black wet nose, a big bushy tail, and it went, "Ow!" And it said, "Hello, old lady. I'm very hungry, and you look good enough to eat. I'm going to eat you for my lunch." And she said, "Oh, you silly little wolfie, she said. "Look at me," she said. "I'm all skin and bone," she said. "I'm so skinny," she said. "But I am going up the hill to see my daughter, and she's going to give me delicious things to eat and delicious things to drink. And when I come back, I'll be nice and fat and juicy, and then you can eat me." And the wolf said, "Oh, very well, old lady. I'll wait for you right here." And the old lady said, "Bye, wolfie." And on she walked. Are you ready? She went, a bit faster this time. A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a. Here I. A rick-a-tick-a, a rick-a-tick. Here I am. A rick-a-tick-a. She walked and she walked until she came to a creature that was big and brown, and it stood up on its hind legs, and it went, "Oh!" It was a bear. And the bear said, "Hello, old lady. I'm very hungry. You look good enough to eat. I'm going to eat you for my..." She said, "Oh, silly beary bear," she said. "Look at me," she said. "I'm all skin and bone," she said. "I just get stuck between your teeth," she said. "But I am going up there to see my..." And she's going to give me delicious things to eat. And delicious things to drink. And then you can eat me. And the bear said, "Oh, all right, old lady. I'll see you soon." She said, "Bye, beary bear." And on she walked. She went. Stop. Just because the lights have gone down doesn't mean I can't see you. I can see you. I want to see you brandish your walking stick. Come on, don't be shy. You're all teachers. You have to give. Okay, hit the ground. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4.
A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my walking stick.
A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I
come on my walking stick. A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my walking stick.
A rick-a-tick-a-tick, a rick-a-tick-a-tick. Here I come on my
walking stick.
The other creature that approached her was covered in stripes. It was yellow. It had whiskers. It had short ears. It was covered in stripes. It was a... And the tiger said, "Rawr! Hello, old lady. I'm very hungry, and you look good enough to eat. I'm going to eat you for my..." And the old lady said, she said, "Don't be silly. silly tigey, she said. I'm just a thin old lady. I'm all skin and bone. I'll get stuck between your butt. I am going up there to meet my, and she's going to give me delicious things to, and to, and then you can, wow, said the tiger. Very well, old lady. See you later. And then she began to walk up the hill like this. Here I go, here I come on my walking stick. She was an old lady and it took her a long time, but finally she got to the top of the hill. Crick! She got to the top of the hill and there was her daughter waiting at the door. She said, Mother, it's so good to see you. I've made delicious things to eat and I've made delicious things to drink. I have made, what about? Chocolate cake. He's with it. Aaron is always with it. And I have made lemonade. And I have made soup and baklava. And I have made who? Chief kofte. And I have made kebab. And I have made fish, French fries, and I have made sarba, and I have made goat stew, and I've made pumpkin soup, your favorite. And the grandmother said, the old woman, she said, oh, thank you so much. And she sat down in her daughter's house, and she began to eat. She ate the chocolate cake and the French fries and the sarba, and the kofta, and the baklava, and the lemonade. She had the kebab. She had the goat stew. She ate. And even though her belly was full, she could smell that pumpkin soup bubbling on the stove. And she said, daughter, can I just have a bowl? She said, of course. So the daughter spooned out a bowl of the pumpkin soup, and the old lady, not just me and the old lady, you and me and the old lady, she began to drink. She said, could I have another? The daughter said, of course, you're my mother. She filled the bowl and she went. She said, just one more. She said, of course. She filled the bowl and she went. She said, daughter, that was the best pumpkin soup I've had in a long time. She was so full she had to undo the button on the top of her skirt. Daughter, she said, that was delicious. But you know I don't like to stay around too long. I want to walk off this food, so I'm going home. Come and eat with me next time. The old lady stood up, she grabbed her walking stick, she was just about to leave when she said, oh, I forgot. There are 3 creatures waiting for me on the road. There is a tiger, a bear, and a wolf. And I promised they could eat me, but I don't want to be eaten. What should I do? And the daughter, she said, And then she saw the pumpkin shell. It was a very big pumpkin shell. She said, Mother, if you could squeeze yourself into that pumpkin shell, then I'll roll you down the hill and you can roll your way home. And the old woman said, I'll try. And the old woman, she climbed into the pumpkin shell, she squeezed herself down, she pulled in her walking stick. Her daughter put the lid of the pumpkin shell on top. She sealed it with some wax. She said, lean back, Mother. She leaned back and she made some holes so her mother could breathe. Then she rolled the pumpkin to the door and she pushed it out of the door. And as it began to roll, the old lady began to sing, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come, here I come, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come. Here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come. Here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come. Bow! She crashed into the first creature, or the third creature, which was the And the tiger said, wow, what's this? It looks like a pumpkin, but it smells like an old lady. And the old lady said, no, 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 I'm just a pumpkin and I'm rolling home. So the tiger sniffed it a bit and said, wow, all right, pumpkin, and pushed the pumpkin, which continued to roll on its journey. Let me see all those arms. And she sang, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come, here I come, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come, here I come, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come, here I come, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come. Bash! She crashed into the second creature, which was the, and the bear said, whoa, what's this? It looks like a pumpkin, but it smells like an old lady. She said, I'm not an old lady, I'm just a pumpkin and I'm rolling home. And the bear said, all right, pumpkin, off you go. And pushed the pumpkin along. And the old lady began to sing. You're so impatient, have patience. It's supposed to get faster. So let's start slowly. Here I come, in my pumpkin. In my pumpkin, faster! Here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come, in my pumpkin, here I come. Bash! She crashed into the first creature, which was the, and the wolf said, are you sure it said that? Are you absolutely sure? Let's try that again. And the wolf said, what's this? Said the wolf. It looks like a pumpkin, but it smells suspiciously like an old lady. And she said, I'm not an old lady, I'm just a pumpkin. But that wolf was very, very cunning, and he said, you smell like an old lady. And he began to scratch and scratch at the lid of the pumpkin. You smell like an old lady, and I suspect that you're going to taste like an old lady. And it used its claws and its nose to knock the lid off that pumpkin shell. But that old lady, she had her walking stick, and bop! She bopped the poor wolf on the nose, and the wolf, he ran off crying, ow, 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 ow. The old lady, she pulled herself out of the pumpkin shell. She walked a few yards to her front door. She opened the door, she went inside, and she made a nice cup of tea. And that is the end of my first favorite story. Thank you. Pass me a bottle of water. Pass me a bottle of water. Teshukla. So, the reason I told you that story is not only is it one of my favorite stories, but recently I told this story to a group of English language teachers. And one of the things that they remarked upon with that story is that the repetition and the joining in, the participation of the audience, meant that it was possibly a good choice for telling stories in English to little ones, to young learners. So as Andrew said before, this story now belongs to you. I give it to you. And I say to you, try it. You don't have to do it exactly the way I did it. Do it your way, because you tell stories your way. But try it with your young learners. See if it helps them to grasp onto the emotional aspect of the story, and therefore makes them interested to understand better the vocabulary, the English words that are in the story. I recently had an experience telling at the Koch school on the other side. And I told, not this story, but a different story to a group of 9-year-olds. And they came up to me afterwards, and they were really, really into the story. And they said, you said something about going behind the stairs, going behind the stairs. I said, going behind the stairs? I don't think I said anything about going behind the stairs. Yes, 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 you said something about going behind the stairs, and the boy, he went behind the stairs. And the situation wasn't that someone had gone behind the stairs, but because there were steps involved in the sentence, they had translated it into their mind as stairs. When I explained to them what that part of the story meant, they went, oh, yeah. And then they walked off all talking in English about that part of the story. So for me, it doesn't matter if they don't get every single word. If at the end of you telling that particular story, they come to you and say, what did that word mean? Then what you've done is you've drawn out of them a desire, a burning desire to understand English just that little more. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah? Would you like to hear another story? Yeah? Okay, this story is from West Africa. It's from Liberia. And if you wish to hear my story, when I say il, you say ow. Okay? Il. Again, this is a measure of how much you want to hear the story. Il. I know the people on this side want to hear it. Il. 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 Once upon a time there was a hunter. When he was born, he cried with such strong, lusty lungs that the women who gathered around him as he lay in his mother's arms, they said, this boy will be one of two things. He will be a great warrior. Listen to that cry. It's a powerful cry. Or he will be a great hunter. He chose the latter. He chose to become a great hunter. And when he was 12, he joined all the other boys who wanted to become great hunters. And as they disappeared into the forest for months upon months upon months to learn the great skill of a hunter, to learn how to see and to see through the darkness, to learn how to walk without disturbing seemingly not even the earth, to be able to listen with the ears of the animals of the forest, to be able to identify each and every animal just by their scent. And when he'd finished his training and he left the forest and returned to the village, he was one of the best hunters. Eel. 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 He was one of the best hunters in that village. And of course, because he was one of the best hunters, he provided the most meat. And because he provided the most meat, he drew the interest of all the eligible young women. And of course, the time came for him to choose a wife. And because he was the best hunter, he could have a pick of any of the young women of that village. He chose the most beautiful. And 9 months later, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And the hunter was so impressed with his son, who cried with the same strong lungs as he had cried with when he was born, that he made a declaration to the whole village. He said, "My son is born and I am proud. And in honor of my son's birth, on the day that he is named, I will sacrifice a leopard cub." The people said, "Wow, he will sacrifice a leopard cub? You're brave enough to go into the forest and take a cub from a leopardess? Wow." Everybody knows the leopardess is a very, very dangerous protector of her young. "Are you sure you will escape with your life?" He said, "Why not? I'm one of the best hunters. In fact, the best hunter in this village. I will do it. I will bring a leopard cub. I will bring that cub into this village, and the day my son is named, I will sacrifice it." The days passed. The day before his son was named, he took all his hunting gear and he went into the forest, moving quietly, stealthily, his ears open, his eyes open, his nostrils open, moving so quietly, almost not breathing, as he walked and bent and turned his way through the forest. Till finally, in the distance, he heard, he turned and he walked in the direction of that sound. He came to the leopardess's lair, but she wasn't there. He found instead not one, but 2 leopard cubs tumbling and playing. His heart leapt. He said, "Yes, it's a sign. I won't sacrifice one, I'll sacrifice 2 leopard cubs. one for my wife and one for my son. And without a moment's hesitation, he picked up the 2 leopard cubs and he dropped them into his bag. The 2 leopard cubs had been playing. One minute they were playing there in the forest that they knew as their home. The next they were suspended in midair. The next they were dropped into darkness. And they were being carried through the forest. And they were afraid. The hunter was triumphant. He walked back to the village. When he got to the village, the women were so impressed with him, they ululated. Yeah! I know you know how to do it, so I'm not going to give you instruction. When I say the women were impressed, I want you to ululate. You ready? The women were so impressed, they ululated. He went to his house and he made a makeshift cage, a small cage, just with sticks and cane. And he put the 2 leopard cubs into that cage with some water, some bits of raw meat, and he left them there. Meanwhile, in the forest, the leopardess was dragging the body of something she'd killed. She was teaching her children how to eat meat. And when she arrived, they were gone. She called for them, they didn't answer. She looked for them, she couldn't see them. And then she picked up the scent. The scent of something that had been on 2 feet. She knew that smell because this thing on 2 feet was always in the forest. So she decided to follow this smell because she knew that where that smell went, she would find her children. She followed the scent of the man out of the forest, twisting and turning along the roads till she came to a hill. She sat on the top of the hill and she looked down into a village. She knew that she couldn't enter that village as a leopardess because if she did, the men would surely kill her. So she went down on her haunches, she wrapped her tail around her back, she rested her head on her front paws, and she waited. She waited until the sun began to set. She waited until she could see the smoke curling up and out of all of those huts in that village. She waited until she could hear the mothers singing to their children, "Ale-bi-balamo, abi-balamo." She waited until she could hear the men drumming quietly. She waited until she thought the village was still. Then she stood up on her hind legs. She transformed herself and she became a woman. A woman who was wearing a cloth of leopard skin. A woman who had such beautiful cat-shaped eyes. A woman with beautiful, even white teeth. A woman who moved with such grace. She walked down that hill. She walked into that village noiselessly. And all the time, she was sniffing the air. So she found the house. She stood outside the house. She had to control herself so she didn't break through the door and grab her children. She knew they were in there, but she waited. She gathered herself, and then she tapped on the door. She said, "Excuse me, is there anybody there?" The hunter, he lifted the door of his house, and he saw a most beautiful woman standing there. Now, his wife had gone to sleep in her mother's house with the baby, because tomorrow was the big ceremony, and all the women would be together. He was there alone, and he saw this beautiful woman. She said, "I'm sorry to disturb you so late at night. I'm a woman traveling alone. I have no one to turn to. It's dangerous out there for a woman on her own. I wonder, could you give me hospitality?" He said, "Of course, come inside." And he invited her in. She said, "Thank you." He said, "Please sit down." She said, "Thank you." And all the while, she was sniffing. And then she saw it, the cage with her children inside. She had to control herself. She took a breath. He said, "May I offer you some water to wash the traveling from your hands and your feet and your face?" She said, "Thank you." But all the time, her eyes were fixed on the cage. She washed her hands, she washed her face, she washed her feet. He said, "Will you have some food?" She said, "Thank you." He offered her the food. She ate the food. All the time, watching the cage. She drank. all the time watching the cage. And then she plucked up the courage. She said, tell me, why do you have 2 leopard cubs in that cage? He said, oh, tomorrow my son will be named. I will sacrifice 1 leopard cub for my wife and the other for my son. I'm so proud of them both. The leopardess, her heart leapt in her chest. She had to control herself. She said, I see. And is it absolutely necessary to sacrifice 2? Wouldn't 1 do? He said, 1 could do, I suppose, but I have 2. So I will sacrifice 2. She said, but they're only babies. And their poor mother, she's probably worried about them. Let me take 1. I'll take 1 into the forest and release it, and you can sacrifice. She stood up, and he said, what do you think you're doing? She said, I'm going to. He said, no, you're not. Excuse me. Who are you? You're a stranger. You're a visitor to my house. Please, don't be rude. Sit down. Finish your food. She sat down. She ate the food. She said, please, I don't think you should sacrifice the both of them. I think you should sacrifice just 1. Think of their poor mother. Her heart is probably breaking. He said, I'm a hunter. What do I care if a leopardess's heart is breaking? I went to the forest. I took what I wanted. Here it is. Now, please, finish your food and don't insult me. The leopardess began to cry. She said, please, I'm begging you. Please, don't kill them both. I beg you. Let me take 1. I'll take 1. You can have the other one. The hunter stood up and he said, listen, I don't know who you are. I don't even know where you came from, but I know you're in my house. And I know that you are questioning my ways. You women understand nothing, but I'm here to tell you, you should dry your tears. And you should not insult me in my house because I offered you hospitality. And you should not question what I am going to do tomorrow. Now, you are invited to my son's naming ceremony. But if that does not suit you, you are free to go now. The leopardess dried her tears. She said to him, you're not going to change your mind. He said, no, I'm not going to change my mind. And she said, you're absolutely sure? He said, I'm absolutely sure. She said, then you give me no option. And right then and there, she jumped up. And right then and there, she transformed herself and she became a leopardess. And before the hunter could grab his rifle or his spear or his bow and arrow, she fell on his neck. And that was the end of him. But she still had to open the cage, and you need nimble human fingers to do that. So she changed herself back into a woman, and she went to the cage. She untied the cane that was holding the sticks together. She picked up her 2 babies. And they didn't recognize her, but they knew her smell. They knew her scent. And they nuzzled into their mother, and she held them tight. And that leopard woman, she walked out of that village, leaving behind her the men playing on their drums, the smoke curling up and out of the roof of the houses. She walked out of the village, leaving the women behind singing to their children, "Ale-bi-balamo, abi-balamo." She walked with her children out of the village up to the top of the hill, where she dropped them onto the ground. She fell to her knees. She transformed herself, and she became a leopardess. And off she ran into the forest with her children. But the next morning, when the hunter's wife came with her babe in her arms, and all the women came to sing songs to welcome him out of the house so that he could sacrifice the leopard cubs for his wife and his children, they sang and they danced and they sang. He didn't come out. So the wife lifted the door. If you had been there, you would have heard her screams of grief, sadness, and terror. But if you'd been in the forest, you'd have seen the leopardess and her leopard cubs playing, tumbling, playing leopard games, and singing leopard songs. And that is the end of my second favorite story. Thank you. I need a time check. How much time do I have left? Tell me. 15 minutes. Would you like another story? Are you sure? Okay. You like stories that make you think, yes? Yes? Or do you want stories that make you laugh? Put your hand up for think. Put your hand up for laugh. Oh, I knew it. Okay, I'll tell you a story from Jamaica. Now, the thing about this story from Jamaica is that it's impossible for me to tell it in English. Because in Jamaica, we speak our own language, which is called Jamaican Patois or Creole. The words are English, but the rhythm is not. Which means that you'll hear words and you'll think, what's she saying? I'm sure I should understand that. But the rhythm is not English. So you may struggle. But if you listen to Bob Marley, you'll be all right. I think. If you want to hear the story when I say crick, you say crack. Crick, crick, crick. Sister Michelle was beautiful. Sister Michelle was round like me and juicy like a ripe mango. Sister Michelle was dark like me and shiny like a ripe nutmeg. When Sister Michelle walked through the marketplace, everything on her body moved. Which meant that when Sister Michelle walked through the marketplace, all of the men's heads moved. And they would say, psst, darling, sweetheart, come here, give me a little kiss. And she would say, no, I don't like you. I don't like your shoes. I don't like your trousers. I don't like your shirt. In fact, I just don't like you. She was very proud. You know women like that. They'll never get married because they're too proud. They look at men like this. You know women like that? Crick, crick, crick. Sister Michelle lived in a house on the top of a hill. Above the house, there was a big tree, a breadfruit tree. A breadfruit is like a big vegetable that you use in Jamaica. You can fry it, you can boil it. It's like potato, but it's delicious. And in the breadfruit tree lived Brother Woodpecker. What's the Turkish word for woodpecker? Haj Kakan. Brother Haj Kakan lived up in the tree. And every evening, Brother Haj Kakan would look down and he would see Sister Michelle and his heart would fill with love. What would it fill with? Deep love. And every day, Brother Haj Kakan would sit up there and he would look down at Sister Michelle and he would say, he would bring her a gift. He would bring her a nice flower to put in her hair. He would bring her a nice big leaf that she could fan herself with. And because he was a woodpecker, he would bring cockroaches and worms. But she didn't like them. But she would put the flower in her hair and she would fan herself with the leaf. But she did not love Brother Woodpecker. Crick! One night, it was like last night, it was a full moon, a moonshine night. And on this moonshine night, Sister Michelle was sitting on her veranda. And she was rubbing cocoa butter into her skin. So she was shiny and beautiful as well. Brother Woodpecker, Brother Haj Kakan was sitting up in the breadfruit tree and he was looking down at Sister Michelle and the moonlight was kissing her skin. And he said, oh, I can't stand it anymore. I have to tell her. I have to tell her what I have in my heart. I have to tell her that I love her and I'm going to ask her to be my wife. So he began to clean himself. He preened himself. He smoothed back his red crest of feathers. He cleaned in between his woodpecker toes. He made sure that his feathers were nice and sleek. And then he flew down out of the breadfruit tree and he landed by her foot And he tapped her foot. Coop, 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 coop. She looked down and she said, hello, Brother Woodpecker. How are you? And he said, oh, Sister Michelle, Sister Michelle, Sister Michelle. I have loved you for the longest time. You look so beautiful here in the moonlight. And I've come down to ask you if you would do me the great honor of being my wife. No, don't say anything right now. Just think about it. In fact, why don't you come for a walk with me along the beach? And when we return, you can give me your answer. Michelle said, me marry you? Me go for a walk with you? You with your red head and your ashy skin and your... Go away! And she kicked poor Brother Woodpecker off the veranda. And poor Brother Woodpecker went rolling over and over, and he landed on his back with his wings outstretched. And Sister Michelle, she went into the house and she shut the door, slam. And Brother Woodpecker, he could hear her inside laughing at him, and his heart was broken. He stood up, he shook the dirt from his feathers, he flew up into the tree, he covered his face with his wing, and he cried long eye water. You know what is long eye water? Tears. He cried long eye water. But as he was crying long eye water, he heard the rumble of a car engine coming round and up and round and up and round and up the hill. And it stopped outside Michelle's house. The car door opened, and out of the car came one long man, almost as long as Thomas. Long, tall man. And he was dressed in a linen suit and a Panama hat. And he bounced up the steps to Michelle's house and he knocked the door. Kung, 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 kung. Michelle opened the door. And when Michelle saw this man, this beautiful man standing there, her eyes nearly came out of her head. And she said, good evening. And the man said, Michelle, I heard about your beauty in every part of the island. And I said to myself, I had to come and see for myself. And it is true. Michelle, you are beautiful. She said, stop it. He said, I wondered if you'd come with me for a little walk along the beach. What do you say? She said, well, I shouldn't really, but all right then. Let me get my shoes and my hat. She went into the house, she put on her shoes, she put on her hat, and she came out. Scoop, 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 scoop. The man had his hand open and ready for Michelle. Michelle put her hand into his. He squeezed her hand and he gave her the look. And Michelle said, stop it. He led Michelle down the stairs and to the car. He opened the car door. She sat down. She said, thank you. He got to his side of the car, sat down. He started the engine, pressed gas, and they were gone. Up in the breadfruit tree, Brother Woodpecker noticed something very strange. As Michelle came down the stairs of her house, the moon cast a long shadow in front of Michelle. But the man had no shadow. That's right. He had no shadow. He wasn't an ordinary man. He was a spook, a specter, a phantom, a ghost, a doppy, as they say in Jamaica. A doppy. Say doppy. That means ghost. The doppy man was in the car with Michelle, and Brother Woodpecker said, what am I to do? What am I to do? My darling, my sweetheart, the love of my life is in a car with a doppy man, and I'm just a woodpecker. I will fly behind the car. And if there's something to be done, I will do it. And he began to fly behind the car. Inside the car, Sister Michelle was having first date nerves. Some people, when they have a date, they're very quiet. Michelle was the opposite. She was But the man, he didn't respond to anything she was saying. He just drove the car like this. He didn't look to the right, he didn't look to the left, which made her even more nervous, which made her even more. And then she felt the car lurch to one side. She wound down the window, she looked outside. She said, one of the wheels has come off the car. The man looked at her and he said, I must drop them where I found them. Then he looked at Michelle like this. When Michelle saw that look, imagine going on a date with a man and seeing that look. Her heart began to beat, kudup, 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 kudup. She felt the car lurch again. She wound down the window. Another wheel had come off the car. She said, excuse me, you seem to have lost another wheel off your car. He said, I must drop them where I found them. And he looked at her again like this. Michelle's heart went into her throat and into her belly and back into her chest. Kudup, 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 kudup. Wheel number 3, wheel number 4 came off the car. Crick! 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 They were in a place in Jamaica known as Fern Gully. Very dark, very quiet, very scary. The dopey man got out of the car. He pulled Michelle out of the car. He led her through Fern Gully down to the beach. Brother Woodpecker was flying behind the car, flying behind the car. Brother Woodpecker landed in one of the trees that lined the beach, and he looked down at the dopey man and Michelle as the dopey man sang, take off, your pretty little hat, your pretty little hat, your pretty little hat, take off, your pretty little hat, for it is to go in the salt sea. Michelle took off the hat and she gave it to the dopey man. The dopey man took the hat and he went towards the water. Tom, tom, and he disappeared under the waves. Michelle, she started to look for a stick to hit him when he came out, but she couldn't find a stick. So she started to pull on the tree. And who did she see in the tree? Who? Brother Haj Kakan. He looked down and she looked up. She said, please, do me little doodle. Do me little doodle, do me little doodle, come and help me do. He said, who, me? Help you, me? With me red head, my ashy skin, and my long toe. And then she remembered what she said to him. And she said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, but it was too late. He had turned his back, and the dopey man was coming out of the water. And he sang, take off, your pretty little shoes, your pretty little shoes, your pretty little shoes. Take off, your pretty little shoes, for they are to go in the salt sea. Let me hear you. All right, ladies, I'll let the men do this bit, okay? For it is to go in the salt. Men? Not bad. He gave her the shoes, or she gave him the shoes, and he disappeared into the water. She turned to Brother Woodpecker, she said, do me little doodle, do me little doodle, do me little doodle, come and help me do. He said, who, me? Help you? Me? With me red, me ashy, and me long. He turned his back. She said, I'm so sorry, but it was too late. Because the dopey man was rising out of the water like a submarine. And if you had been there, you'd have seen that even though he went into the water 2 times, he was as dry as a bone. As he sang, take off, your pretty little socks, your pretty little socks, your pretty little socks, take off, your pretty little socks, for they are to go in the salt. Erin, a round of applause for Erin. Very good. Took off the socks and gave them to the dopey man. He disappeared into the water. He said, do me little doodle. Do me little doodle, do me little doodle, come and help me do. He said, you see, I may not be a big, strong man with a linen suit and a Panama hat, but I love you. That's why I'm here. So I will help you. Stand still. And she stood still. Brother Haj Kakan flew out of the breadfruit tree And he flew around Michelle once, twice, 3 times. When he flew around her the 3rd time, she felt something strange beginning to happen. She could feel the hair on her head changing, and they had become feathers. She looked down. She was no longer a big, round woman. She had thin, 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 thin bird legs. She was shrinking down to the ground. Her mouth, her nose, her chin became one and became a beak. Her arms shrunk into her sides and became wings. She was no longer Sister Michelle. She was Sister Woodpecker. She was covered in brown feathers. And Brother Woodpecker said to Sister Woodpecker, "Come, let us fly away from this place before he returns." So Brother and Sister Woodpecker, they took to the air, and they were gone. And the Duppy man came out of the water, and when he couldn't find Michelle, he turned and he walked back into the sea. Back at the house, Brother and Sister Woodpecker were on the railings of her veranda. Brother Woodpecker said to Sister Woodpecker, "It's up to you. I can change you back to your old self, and then I will fly away from here, and you need never see my face again. Or, if you prefer, you can stay as you are, and you and I, we can make a beautiful life together. What do you say?" Sister Woodpecker looked at Brother Woodpecker with new eyes. He was cute. He had a beautiful red crest of feathers. He had a beak that was sharpened to perfection. He had cubical woodpecker toes. And when he looked at her, she could see love. And so she said, "Oh, if you don't mind, I'll stay as I am, and we can make a life together." And so that's what happened. Brother Woodpecker and Sister Woodpecker were married. Some months later, she laid many eggs. The eggs hatched. The children flew all around the world. And when you hear a woodpecker tap, 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 tapping onto the side of a tree, it's not just making a hole. It's tapping out the story in Morse code. Telling you the story of his mother and father, Brother Woodpecker and Sister Michelle. And that is the end of my story.